In the last video, I asked you all the question, honestly, because I'd not fully considered it myself actually. Did the Creator ever actually give us his name in the Bible, whether it's in the Hebrew, Greek, or English or Spanish? Did he give us his name, or even the name of his son in the Aramaic or Hebrew, or Aramaic Hebrew, whichever you like? But then something I didn't expect happened, which was incredibly wonderful. Over 50 of you or more answered with well over 20 distinct African languages that came alive in the comments. It was amazing, actually. In your own languages, Igbo and Yoruba, Iwi, Bantu, Swana, Xhosa, Swahili, and many others. You gave us real names, like still spoken today in your own household, your own area, in different parts of all over Africa. I could get a map out and it pretty much covers a good chunk of Africa. And here's the part that I found so strange, so interesting. Not one of them matched Yahweh, okay? Not one of them had Yahusha, but almost every single one of them matched something else. Something really, I think, that is much older and much stranger or much more interesting and honestly incredible, really incredible for me anyway. So in this video, I'm going to show you why I don't think that the letters that everybody teaches us today, the YHWH or the Tetragrammaton, but of course those letters have no vowels, and we've gone over that in the last video. If you want to look at that, please do. But we say that these 4 letters represent, whether it's written in the script of the Hebrew Aramaic, or if it's in English or whatever language you're looking at, that these 4 letters are the word or name of God. But I actually want to dispute that completely, that that's his name, but we'll get into that. And if you remember looking at the comments that were given, none of the comments that I'm showing you now are actually his name. They're about him or who he is and those kind of things, descriptive or a verb, but they're not, my name is Paul, my name is John, my name is Muhammad, or that kind of thing. Not that kind of a name. So when people tell you that YHWH is the name of God, let's really look into that today. I know there'll be some pushback. Some people will say, yes, I saw it in an Egyptian temple, or I saw it on this stele, or I saw it on this ruin, or whatever, those 4 letters. And I'm going, okay, fine. Don't really want to dispute that today. But we've taken from those 4 letters that is actually the name of God. And in English, they say, I am that I am, which I don't think is actually the full translation either, because we've taken that from this Aramaic Hebrew that is rather new. And I want to go over what it actually said in a minute here. And I want to spend some time on the names that you actually gave me. Is incredible. And I hope that as we go through them, and I'll have some of them on the screen as I'm going through this as well, but sit with those and think about them. What does it mean? What is it? Of course, they're not all the same language and they're not all the same name, but think about the essence of what they actually mean or what they point to, because I think they're ancient. Some of them are 4, 5, 6,000-year-old names. Some people, I'm sure, will say, oh, those names are all the names of the devil and all that kind of thing. But I think that's really a colonial power, my own, Japheth kind of thing, putting down the names of God that were in Africa as well. And America as well, the native people had their own names for the exactly same thing. But I think once you see the pattern, you can start to see, okay, we don't need these YHWH that came from the folks living in the Middle East right now and believe that they know all about the Father and that we're going to use their script and their beliefs to make all our Yahusha, Yahweh, Yahuwah, all those things out of their 4-letter word. And not that 4-letter word. The 4-letter word YHWH, or as they consider it to be the name of God. So let's get into that. So let's say we do find this 4-letter Aramaic, or we call it Hebrew, but really it's just Aramaic script, and we find it somewhere, like I said, in Egypt or anywhere in the world. We find these on a wall or a ruin 1,000, 2,000 years ago or whatever. Does that prove that that is the name of God? Or does it even prove that that was the name in Hebrew or Aramaic at the time of Jesus? It does not. It just proves that we found something with those letters on it. It does prove that somebody wrote it. Yes, if it's that 2,000 years old or 3,000 years old, I've got no problem with that. Somebody wrote it down at some point in time. But what is the earliest copy of Hebrew where we have it in the Hebrew script, in the actual writing, in its placement in the script? Well, that's medieval Europe, up in the Ukraine area, up in that area. It's medieval and it's European. It's from Japheth, who 1,000 years ago converted, and that to the religion of the day. And that's what we have today, coming through the Pharisees all the way up through them and now to us today. And if you go to the Middle East, you'll notice by skin colors that there's different skin colors than one would assume. If you go look at the slaves that were in Egypt, there's definitely a different skin color or tone, and they weren't selling creams back in the day. But anyway, the earliest script we have for the Hebrew with YHWH, or the transliteration that's actually in the script of Aramaic, the oldest we have is 1,000 years ago. That's it, 1,000 years ago. So like I said, we don't even know that the script, even if that is the 4 letters that were used at the time of Jesus in the Aramaic, we don't even know that because all those copies were lost or likely destroyed as they made their new script and new things to build it into the Kabbalah and build in all the stuff that has been built into the Hebrew text. As they did that, they also changed some things. We know they changed the timeline of the fathers. We know they changed many scriptures that were used in the New Testament. They can't be found even in your Bibles today because they come from the Hebrew Masoretic script of 1,000 years ago. I want to quickly start because I know a lot of my followers, a lot of people watch my show are from Africa or in the US and are from the African American group or the Indian African American group, as I like to call it. But I want to show you this channel. If you really want to know about this issue and from someone in your own community, here's a good channel. I'm just going to put a picture here. I'm not going to play him, but if you want to go listen to that video, it's fantastic, excellent. And he explains, and he does believe that the Tetragrammaton, or this 4-letter Hebrew thing, is in the Hebrew Bible. And he explains that it is not a noun, that it's a verb, that it's a description. It is not a noun like, hey, this is my name, I'm James, I'm Frank. And he explains it to you. It's very, very well done. And he's using old Bibles, the Ethiopian text and the old Hebrew text, to explain why it is not the name of God. It is a description of God. It was who he is. So if that would help you, and I know I'm not in your community, I'm just someone trying to help out, that's it, and I know that can cause some problems because of my skin coloration. But my heart is actually in Africa these days, and I love all the great comments, and I love the people, and actually my brother's married to a woman from Nigeria, so I'm almost African. But like I said, if you want to dig deeper into this, I would highly recommend you this channel and this video. I think you'll find great help if you really want to dig into it. But I want to move on. Think about how we handle every other thing we find. We find a rock, the Bat Creek stone. You can look that up in the Americas, and it had Paleo-Hebrew on it, and now they say it isn't, and that kind of thing. But that's fine. But the name that was on there, we can go, okay, that means such and such. Well, we don't know that because that's just what is on that stone. And if we are over in Africa or in the Middle East and we find an inscription, and even if we think it means Baal, we don't know, as I discussed in my last video, that Baal or Baal is actually has many meanings, not just this pagan god. It has many other meanings about family and father and king and the person that's ruling the family and that the leader, the head, those kind of things. But when we see that stone, if we pull it out of the ground and it has this one thing on it, we go, oh, that means that they were worshiping Baal. And we don't know that. We just have a stone that has that name on it. And it's the same thing. We have to be honest when we find the inscription. Even if we do find the Aramaic inscription in Egypt or someplace, and we can't then go and say, well, the Egyptians believed in the Father, the same Father as everyone else. No, they just wrote that on there. We don't know why they wrote it, what it meant at the time to them. We just know it was written there. So if we see Baal on a tablet or a stone or a wall or Marduk or Asherah or any other name, All we know is it got written there at that time and it had some kind of purpose. But unless we can really study it out in its context and what all the other words around it and everything else and what it meant, we can't really just say, oh, that is the name of the creator to them just because we found this stone. So just remember there's a double standard. Whenever someone finds these 4 letters, they go, oh, they believed in the one true God, the creator, and that's his name, and they used it too. Actually, I want to show you this video too, because this video is from an occult channel, completely occult. And I have nothing to do with that stuff. It's serpent language, okay? But the issue is they use the Tetragrammaton, or this 4-letter word for God. They use it all the time. It's one of the most powerful words for them. And I go like, okay, so if the occult people are using the name of the Father, it doesn't make sense to me, because the Pharisees couldn't stand Jesus, for instance, or whatever you want to call him. But the best name, as I said, that we have that's closest is Yesus from the Greek. But if we go and say, yeah, they loved Yesus because they're using his name all the time, then I'm going like, that doesn't make sense. They didn't like him at all. And if you go read the writings of the Pharisees, and I don't think you should because it's pretty disgusting, they have only the complete hatred for the name of the Son of God. Complete hatred, right? He's in hell and poop in hell and that kind of stuff. That is how they see him. So they're not going to use his name for worship. And it's the same as the Savior said about the Pharisees. Your father is the devil, meaning you honor the things that come from the other guy, from the serpent. You don't honor me or the Father. So why would the people that don't honor the Father or the Son, why would they be honoring the name and keeping it the way it is and then using it? So then we see these occult people using it in occult practices. The Yahweh, the Yah, all the different things, they're all used in the occult practices as well. So we have to be very, very careful, in my opinion, when we start just taking what other people say and believe from the Middle East and using their word on it when they're not your people, and they may have a different agenda that they would like to push on you. I covered this in the other video, but I want to cover it just quickly here. The reason that these 4 letters are a huge issue is because it's a dead language. Yes, there's people that speak Hebrew today, but it's not Hebrew. It's a mixture of Yiddish and Aramaic and maybe a teeny bit of Hebrew and Germanic stuff, and probably even some Russian, or the Yiddish, that kind of thing. It is not Hebrew. It was made up. Hebrew didn't need the language. We lost all the vowel sounds. There are only consonants in any ancient Aramaic, or Hebrew as they call it, that you can find from 2,000, 3,000 years ago. There are no vowel sounds. Those were passed down orally, and we don't have them. No one has them. So the language is a dead language. But they then added, about 100, 200 years ago, they added vowels back into the language. So when you hear people speaking Hebrew, it's just a made-up language. I'm sorry, it's completely made up. Does it have some grounding possibly in Aramaic and Hebrew? I'm sure it has some, a little bit. But in my opinion, it has at least half error, because they have no idea what the vowels are. And that's very important. Because when we look at the names, all these 20 or 30 names that were given to me in the comment section that are handed down orally in Africa, that means we have what they sounded like. Now, have they switched over time a little bit? Of course they have. All languages change a little bit over time, and some of the people made great comments about that, how many of the names sound like the other names in this way or that way. Of course, but they were orally transmitted from father to son to father and father down through the generations. That means we know what the sound was, or at least we know what it sounded like to some degree, even 1,000 years ago. We can go back, we can trace it, which is what linguists do. They go back and take languages and trace them to common, denominators, back to a common place. So there may be 2,000 or 3,000 languages in sub-Saharan Africa, which of course is another colonial name. But the issue is the 2,000 or 3,000 languages go back into what they call the Proto-Congo Niger language group, or the Proto-Congo or the Proto-Niger Congo language group, whichever. But it's an ancient language. I believe it's the language of Shem. But if you And then in Northern Africa, they have the Afro-Asiatic languages, which are more in Egypt, the Horn of Africa, and through the north of Africa. But the issue is that these language groups are language groups with real sounds, with consonants and vowels. A lot of it was not written down. There's some places where it was, but most of it was orally transmitted. But that's a lot better than dead letters that we don't even know what the letters, how they sounded, nor the vowels that were added. So we don't know anything about those words, so we can make up a language. But if I gave you 20 or 30 or 50 characters, and you say, go for it, make up a language, and then use those characters to base it on, you could do that if you wanted to. There is no proof that the Hebrew that is spoken today is anywhere even close to the Hebrew of even 2,000 years ago, which wasn't Hebrew anyway. It was Aramaic, because we know that Jesus and the 12 spoke Aramaic, and all of Judah spoke Aramaic. Hebrew was dead and as a doornail by the time they came along, except a few things in the temple were still used the old Hebrew, I believe. But other than that, everybody else, they just spoke Aramaic, which is the language of Babylon, which is Afro-Asiatic language group, which is why everybody thinks that the Shemites who lived in Egypt and then in Babylon, we think that that's part of the Semitic group of languages or Afro-Asiatic group. But reality, their language came from there because that's the language they adopted. It's like after that, in Jesus' day, they were going from Aramaic, became very, very poor. Aramaic was not used that much even in Jesus' day. It was Greek. So everybody, even a lot of the Judah, was starting to use Greek. So we see all the New Testament in Greek because that was the language of the day. Just like in our day, I hate to say it, but English has more or less become the language of the day. Because wherever you go in the world, that tends to be the most common spoken language. Not pushing that is the best language by any means, because it's not. But it is and it's very hard to learn, I think, for people. But it is the language, right? So if you're in Africa and you've had colonial powers that are from Britain, well then South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, those areas, you have a lot of people that speak English. And if you're up in the Sahel, then you have a lot of people that speak French. And I'm sure there's places with German too because of that. But these languages get picked up. So Jesus and the 12 spoke Aramaic, and they wrote in Aramaic. They didn't write in Paleo-Hebrew. Nobody did after the Babylonian captivity. It was Aramaic. So the letters you're looking at that are Hebrew aren't Hebrew. Moses never saw them. Those aren't Moses' letters. He wrote in another language. They call it Paleo-Hebrew. So compare, like I said, the living languages that you have in Africa that show up in the comments. Nyambe in Lingala, Nyambe in Angola, Modimo in Swana, Mungu in Swahili. These aren't identical words, but they're clearly related, the way father or vater or pater are related across European languages. That kind of relatedness carried across sound and generations of living speakers is the real, actual evidence. That's the evidence. It's passed down orally, but it's the evidence. It's just not the kind of evidence we've been trained in the West to respect or to even look at or acknowledge. So when the colonial powers came in and they brought their Christianity and their languages and their customs, they told you that all the names that you used for the Creator were for the devil, which is completely false. I'm sorry, it's false. Now, could one or two of them be? Sure, why not, right? It's like Baal is used for some things, and it can also be used as a bad way, right? So, but that doesn't mean that all your fathers were worshiping the devil. That's just European da-da-da. What can I say? So just remember, you can't prove, no one can take all the 2,000 languages and all the names for the Father or the Creator or whatever and say they all came from this one exact root, down to this one word, and that's the correct one. No, but you start to get this feeling, and I think as I'm showing these to you, you can get the feeling of how similar they are, even though the names may not be the same. The idea that comes across, the reverence, the kindness, the generosity, it's almost spiritual to read these words and see these names and go, okay, So I know there's issues between the Igbo and the Yoruba and maybe the Bantu as well in different groups. And I know Bantu is a language, it's not a group. But there's these issues that have been caused by colonial powers and those things. But when you just go back and look, these all came from fathers. Even before all the fighting began, these were the names that came, and you can see the commonality. So though we cannot get back to the first word, but that came and then split into 2,000 languages, we can start to see that the meaning has kept even through all these different names. And I think that's fascinating. But I am confident in saying this. Hebrew Aramaic of today, the text that we have today, that is 1,000 years old, it has no equivalent chain, no passing down from father to son, all the way back to Jesus' day and even earlier. There's nothing there. It's not a different kind of evidence than the African names. It's missing the thing that matters the most. And that is what? That's the sound. The actual words, the actual language. That's why it's a dead language. It's like if you go and you look up Egyptian characters or characters from anywhere in the world that we don't know what they say anymore. You can make those characters say whatever you want them to say, but that doesn't mean that that's what they mean or what they say. So the thing that's missing in the Hebrew of our day completely is that there is no connection to the actual language. It's missing the key part. Language is the heart. Language is the centerpiece. The sounds, the context, how it's used, the meaning, those things are what holds the culture and the language together. And the Hebrew Aramaic of today has none of that. That's why it's so easy in our day for people to take these letters and these things and make them into, as this other video did, in the 4 elements of the world, and how God's name, the YHWH, that name is the power behind everything in the world, and da-da-da-da, which is not at all what he said. And we'll get into that in a second. We do have a script, not in Hebrew, but we do have a script with the Bible that goes back before the time of Christ, that we can track how it sounded, and that is the Greek. Now, I'm not, as you know, pushing the colonial power thing, okay, because the Greek, even when it was written, that was before all this colonial power stuff, at least that we have in our day, okay? It was before Rome. The Greek Septuagint came when the Greek powers were in charge, after the Babylonian powers, which we know was an African power, and the Assyrians, which were an African power. But the next power that rose up after the Medes and the Persians was what? The Greek power. And Greek, of course, we know Greece is, and Alexander the Great and all that, and how they took over much of parts of Africa and all that kind of thing. But then came Rome after that, then came the church after that, then came da-da-da-da. So the Septuagint that we have is very old. It's 2,250 or 80 years old. It's way 250 years before the time of Christ. And I already made this point in the last video, that Joshua in the Greek Septuagint from before the time of Christ had Iesous or Yesus, or the name that Jesus came from, for the name of Joshua. That's how old it is. Now, we have to remember that the people that translated this were not Greeks trying to make Hebrew text fit something in their language. It was 72 It was 72 scribes that knew Greek and Hebrew, and they were Hebrew, right? They weren't Greeks doing this. They were Hebrews who could speak Greek, and they were translating that language, the dead language we don't have anymore, into Greek. So we don't have the original, even the name of Jesus, as I said, we don't have his name in Aramaic or Hebrew. We don't. What we have is what they left, which is in Greek. And it's useful, but it's not useful for establishing what Hebrew sounded like. But it is useful for understanding how the scriptures were in their day, because they translated from that into the Septuagint, which is much better than the Masoretic or Hebrew text of our day, which is full of errors and mistakes on purpose, if you want to call them. I've already given you two of these brothers. You can look up there's a real great brother from America that has a great video. I've already left that for you. Here it is again. I've given you the one that shows how I mean, you can find tons of channels on YouTube where they use the Tetragrammaton, or the name of God, as the Hebrews of our day say it is, or the Israelites of our day say it is. And those two will help you to understand the two ways that name is being used or misused. And then I also have this channel, which is called Ben Born Again, I think. And remember, of course, I am not from the Born Again. I never was in my life part of this Born Again movement at all. So I have nothing to do with his religion, beliefs, and that kind of thing. But he does exceptional videos on the Tetragrammaton, on the names that have been come up recently for the names of Jesus and God and that kind of thing, and how they're, and the star of Remphan and all that kind of stuff. So if that's an interest of yours, recommend his videos. They're very good for that. Just keep away from the Christianity part. That's my opinion anyway. So please, please study this YHWH from all the angles, so you can know for yourself and don't have to trust me or any of these other presenters. Study it for yourself so you can know the name you use for the Father is the name you're most comfortable with. In my last video, I said all these names in Africa are actually just as legitimate or more legitimate than any name that has been made up since, the Yahweh and Yahuwah and all those things. Those are not legitimate names. They cannot be traced linguistically back to anything. And scholars have said so. They're just made up names using that four-letter word. So we're believing that the Pharisees, who brought us the scriptures from Babylon after they converted to the worship of the other guy, or whoever did, and how that happened. I don't want to get into that in this video, because some people say the Pharisees are only from 200 BC. I'm going like, the religion that the Pharisees based on came out of Babylon, absolutely. It's occult religion, and it came down that way, which is why the Savior spoke so harshly to them, was because that's who they followed. They followed the occult, which is why they rejected him. Jesus said, Abraham would have rejoiced in my day, but you guys might be the seed of Abraham, but your father is not Abraham. Your father is the devil, meaning they worshipped that name, and they worshipped those things which are completely incorrect, in my opinion. So I am not telling you that your names in Africa are every one of them is the name that should be in the Bible. I'm not saying that. But the understanding, when you look at the overview from the plane up above looking down, you can see the hand of the Father in the names. And know they, as I said, they are not the names of the devil. Okay? They are the names, the sacred names of God for each group. And who they saw as God and his characteristics, that's another thing. But it is what that names meant. It certainly did not mean the devil, as the colonists said from Europe. I want to again in this video mention, I understand the pain that has been caused, not to me personally. I've had my own huge struggles in life, but mine isn't because of my skin color, but because of the colonial powers in the US and all the Americas and all of Africa and India and pretty much everywhere else in the world. Because of the colonial powers and what's been done with Christianity and with the Bible, there is this dislike of the names, of course, of Jesus and that kind of thing. But can I take you back? Jesus and the people in his time, the 12 apostles, those that wrote the New Testament, based it completely from the Septuagint. It's word for word from the Greek Septuagint. What we have for the New Testament, when it's quoting the Old Testament, they're quoting out of the Septuagint, not the Hebrew fake text. If you can understand that, maybe you can start to appreciate. We don't have to go, if you're not comfortable saying Jesus, Yesu, and all those things, that's fine. That's no problem. Just say the Son or the Father. That's what I tend to do. Rather than saying God, I tend to say the Father, or Abba, which is, that's even closer. That's like your dad or kind of thing when you're praying. And if you want to use your own local name then that's fine too. I think Heavenly Father or God or whatever you want to call him, I think he knows who you're talking to. I think he knows your heart. I think he knows what you mean. But if we pick up names that are not real and start to believe them, that's why I call my channel Fleeing Babylon. Who is giving us? You have to ask. I did, as I said in my other video, I was using some of these names in a couple of my earliest videos, if you look at them, Yahuwah and Yahusha and that kind of thing. But when I actually studied it, I'm going like, oh, Babylon's got me again. Fleeing Babylon is extremely hard because everything we're taught pretty much is Babylon, almost all of it. In religion, all of it. Every religion that I know of is Babylon. It's church and state. And when you think you've left and you've gone over here, you've gone into another group, and that group may be African American or African, and you go in that group, and that group is Babylon too. It's just a different version with maybe a different skin color or different words, but it's still Babylon. Now I've got to the point where I don't go to any group at all. I don't trust any group at all. I can't. Doesn't mean I can't go to a church and with my wife or whatever and sit there. That's fine. But I don't put my heart with any group, which of course is the first commandment, which is to have no other judges, gods, no other people before the Father. And I think that's about right. And remember, I'll put this in here. Who did Jesus in the New Testament, what did he call his Father? Did he call him YHWH? Did he call him those things or any of those names? No, he didn't. Or YHWH. No, he didn't use those. He said Abba, which is like dad, closer than father. It's more endearing, more like dad or daddy. And when he was on the cross, he said Eli, Eli, which is more like the reverential, the creator God. And but still, he wasn't saying, hey, YHWH or those names. He wasn't saying those things, even in the Greek or in the Hebrew. That's not what he was saying. He knew his Father. He worked for him. He was connected to him. That's who he knew, and he reverenced him, as he wants us to reverence him as well. And I only see reverence in the names that you guys have submitted. I see anything except reverence, great reverence, and I appreciate that. So think about your names that you gave me while I'm reading this part out, because this is what the Septuagint said. The translation was 250 years before Jesus. This is what the name God gave, which it wasn't a name. He was saying, Moses, go tell them so-and-so sent you, right? And when he met him first time, he said this. And what he said was, and this is in the Septuagint, which was translated from the Hebrew or Aramaic Hebrew of the day, not the New Hebrew. And it says, ego emi ho on. I am the one who is. I am the one who is. And then look at your own descriptions you've given me for your names. And it's right there. I am the ever-existent one, the one who never empties, the one that's always there. I am the one who is. A description. He did not say, my name is Charlie, John, Muhammad, or anything else. He said, I am the one who is, or the living one forever. Whatever you want to call it, but it was not a label, nor was it a name. It was he describing who he is or what he is, his purpose, his position, that kind of thing. It's important to understand that this came from Greek, not from Hebrew Aramaic. And I'm not saying it did, but understand that these 72 agreed on these words being the closest to the actual Hebrew. Instead of I am that I am, that it is I am the one who is, which is for me a lot better than I am who I am. I am the one who is, from everlasting to everlasting, I suppose. So is it proof of exactly what it was in the Hebrew Aramaic? No. But we do know that they did it directly and to the best of their ability. So it's like if I was taking one of your languages, or if I live in Mexico and I'm taking Spanish and I speak Spanish. But if I'm translating, I can't be perfect in my translating, because not every word translates directly for the exact essence of the word in English from Spanish or Spanish to English. Any more than some of you have mentioned in your comments, it more or less means this, the name we use. We can't say it exactly because it means slightly more this or that. So names, when you translate things, the words don't translate directly, like sun is soul, right? We don't know exactly what those words were because we don't have any ancient copies. Remember, there are no Hebrew Aramaic copies of the scriptures at all. There aren't. And even the Dead Sea Scrolls, if you really want to learn about that, watch that Ben Born Again channel there. He does a very good one on the Dead Sea Scrolls that magically appeared the very year that that nation in the Middle East started. Anyway, be that as it may. But look at the script. Is the script and the Dead Sea Scrolls, does it look like modern Hebrew or does it look like Paleo Hebrew? Just look at it and you'll start to get, I think you'll start to see what's going on a little bit. So here's where, it comes together, I hope, for you. Look at Sonini Nanini, which is another one that I was given. The Eternal One, I am that I am, or Lago, God, with the added sense of one who does not age, or Olodumare, the source that never runs dry, or Mawu, the all-sufficient one, or Chukwu, or Chiniki, greatness, the one who creates, or Modimo, or Mungu, or Nyambe, or Katonda, the same underlying shape, the same idea, the same sense, again and again and again, from languages all over African families, thousands of miles apart and thousands of years apart, and yet the essence, not the name, as I said, but the essence of what it is so close. It's almost, I wasn't going to say creepy, but it's a testimony to me more than anything else, I guess. It is a witness that the Father loves his children in all 2,000 to 3,000 of these different families and groups. And to see the Shemites divide, but keep the essence of who and what they believed in, the same essence that Abraham and Isaac and Jacob came from, and that Moses got when he was speaking to Jethro, and what he got on the mountain. And when he has that same language in the Septuagint as is in your languages, I think it's amazing. But what it does do is that every one of these is not his name. Okay, that's the important thing. It's a description, not a personal name like, hey Joe, come down and give me a blessing, or hey Frank, how you doing up there in heaven? That's a name. He doesn't give us a name. He didn't give Moses his name. He gave him, I am the one who is, or the one who will come, or the one that will be, all that kind of thing. But that is a descriptor. So whether you trust the Greek translation or you trust your own fathers, and I think when you look in the Americas as well, the languages in the Americas, which I believe also come from the Hebrew, which I also believe there's a lost tribe issue going on there, and I'll do that in another video. But it is the one who is that comes from the Septuagint. But see how well that matches your own languages. I will reiterate again here, the Masoretic text, where our Bibles are based from. The Hebrew group that took on the religion of your fathers, but just 1,000 years ago, their book that they have it's written in consonants only. There's no vowels, there's no sounds, there's no understanding even what the consonants are. There's no living chain of speakers connecting us to how it sounded when it was said and understood. So even though it's in the Hebrew, if you want to call it, or the Aramaic Hebrew, we have no idea what it said, what it meant exactly, what its nuance was, nothing. We just have what it is today from 1,000 years ago in medieval Europe. The Septuagint, the Greek version, as I said, way before the Roman Church, it's translated from Hebrew Aramaic source by speakers who were scribes of Hebrew Aramaic, translating into Greek. It is still, the Greek part is still a living spoken language all the way through the centuries. Yes, it's changed. Yes, it's, went from Greek to Latin and all that kind of thing. But we can trace those languages because when it's rendered into Greek, which was a language we do have full, verified phonetic or the sound knowledge of, we know what Greek sounded like. So we know what they were saying in that time, 2025, almost 2,250 years ago. We know what the Greek pronunciation was. It's not a mystery. What is a mystery is what it was translated from, because we have no record of that. So the specific choice that the translators made, they didn't say, I am that I am. That's from 1,000 years later from the new Hebrew text. What they said was, ego iyemi ho on, which means, I am the one who is. So it's a description, and it is not a personal name. So the advantage of the Septuagint isn't that it proves what the original Hebrew was, but it proves what it was trying to say as close as can be when one is translating, which makes it the best and most reliable source for that, what Moses was told, that we have in Scripture anywhere. It's the best that can be verified, but it is not in the original language, but the essence of what it meant and what it sounds like now comes through. So what we have, we're putting back as best we can, which is why your own names in Africa are of great value to me, and I hope to you, as you look at them and you can see reverberating down through thousands of years the essence of what Moses was told. So please stop listening to people that are trying to resurrect new languages, all these new words for God and the Father and Jesus and all these things from a dead language that they have no ability to bring up reality from. That is sad that that's where we are, but it is where we are. So why would you allow their text, whether it be the Greek one, the Bible we have, to dictate that that's exactly how everything sounded, any more than using the Hebrew one, which is 1,000 years newer? Just because they say it's Hebrew, it's not. It's just a made-up language, made up of characters that came from where? From Babylon, Aramaic characters. They're not the Hebrew characters, and they're not the Hebrew sounds because we don't have that anymore. It's just a language. It's fine, we can accept it. It's a language like any other language, but it's not an ancient language by any means. But your own inheritance is on the papers, on these things that I put, that people have commented. That's your inheritance, the name of the Father in your own tongue, your own language. And that's more valid than these made up characters and languages, which are so tied to the occult that I probably have to do a video on that too as well. But it's so sad. So if you're Igbo, sit with the name, Chukwu, and understand it, and go talk to your elders if you don't know it and understand it well enough. Or if you're Bantu or whatever, go find the name that applies for you. And though we don't have the true name for Jesus per se, other than the Greek Yesus, or even the older Greek how it was actually spelled, but that for me is okay. But do I think that he went around being called Jesus? I don't think that's what he was called, right? Any more than we know what any of his apostles were called, because we don't have the language anymore. It didn't come through. All we have is the Greek. So please, I just implore you to study it out for yourselves. I can't tell you what to believe or think. All I can do is share with you what I've learned, and have you please go and research. Go to all, I gave you 3 channels. There's dozens, and study it out for yourself. And more than anything, how could I say this nicely? Keep all the commandments. Keep the Sermon on the Mount. Because in John 14, it promises us, and it promises you, especially you in Africa, and the scattered remnant everywhere, that if you keep his words, he said, if you love me, keep my commandments, and I will send you the Comforter. And the Comforter will bring all these things to your remembrance. So who's going to teach us? Who actually knows the truth of all these things? Well, the Comforter does, because it comes from the Father. It's the connecting ability or whatever of the Father in our lives, if we are clean and open to receiving it. But then we can know for ourselves, and we can go directly to the Father and get answers. Study everybody you can and understand everything and try to do your best. But in the end, who is going to show you what is true? Well, it's the Comforter. And the only way we get the Comforter is what? Keeping all the commandments and loving other people. That's how we get the Comforter. Someone added this comment today as I was making this video, and I wanted to add it, and I'll show it to you here, because it gives you the understanding. He's talking from the perspective of, I probably won't say this right, but the Iwe, I think in West Africa. the meaning of Jesus. Because he says in the Iwi language, the Yah can mean air, breathe, God. A similar word, Ye, can mean hey, and Su means to be sufficient or enough. So Yesu means God is sufficient. And if you want to say he is sufficient, it's best to say Isu, not like Esau, and he goes on about that. So find out, and I'm sure for him, he's comfortable saying Yesu instead of Jesus, Yesu. And whatever you can come up with, I don't believe that Jesus will be offended if you don't like the name Jesus, because that wasn't his name anyway at the time. It's just the closest we have in the Greek, coming from Jesus, okay, or Jesus, or in Spanish, Jesus. But if you feel Yesu, or whatever you feel is most comfortable for you, that is not coming from another side, the serpent side of things, then I think go for it, right? And feel it out by the Spirit. Think of what Jesus said just before he died. He said to Philip, have I been with you so long that you do not know the Father? Because Philip said, show us the Father in John 14. Then he tells them what? If you love me, keep my commandments. And he tells them that's how you get the Comforter, because he will send it. If you're keeping the commandments, he will send the Comforter, because you love him. And then he says he will then one day reveal himself, and he'll reveal the Father. But the key thing I want to mention here is Jesus said that he was not the Father. He said the Father is greater than I am. Okay? I don't want to get too deep into that. You might want to think about that one. But the Father is greater than the Son. They are not the same person. And I know the Trinity that came from the occult side of things through the Roman Church after the fact has us all confused. But the Savior was connected to the Father. How did he see Nathanael under a tree? Well, he was living as a human being like you or I. How could he couldn't see Nathanael under a tree, but the Father could. And the Comforter could tell him about Nathanael, what he was doing. So the Savior said, I only do and say the things that my Father tells me. He was that connected that he just acted for the Father, which is why he was telling Philip, in my opinion, if you can't know the Father, I've been acting as the Father, saying the Father's words for 3 years. You should know the Father through me. But then he goes on to say in John 14, I'm not the Father. He said the Father is greater than I am. So Jesus is the Word of the Father, acting for the Father, connected to him. And on the cross, as I said, he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Or, he's calling out to the Father, Creator, the person that all your names are, the same as the Septuagint had. Or I am the one to come, or I am the one that will be, and all that kind of thing. Yet in Mark, and I'll give that scripture here, he uses the word Abba, which, as I said, is father, or really is more like dad, like you'd say to your father going into the house. Okay, so he didn't call his father like, oh, Father, you're untouchable. It was more like the Father that gave me the money to go down to the store, that loves me. That Father, his dad. That closeness, that's what's in Mark. But when he's on the cross, he is suffering and is left alone, and he calls out to his Father, but using the Creator side of things. So think about when Jesus comes. He says in a parable, when he comes and he tells the people that helped the stranger and the person in prison and the infirm and gave food to the hungry, and he said, you fed me when you do those things. He didn't say, I came and asked you for my name and you didn't tell me the right name, so you're out of here. He didn't say that. He said, what have you done? What have you done with your life? How have you acted? Have you taken my name upon you and learned of me and been like me and connected to the Father and connected to the Spirit, kept the commandments, done those things, and acted as the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes ask us to? When he meets the Samaritan woman, who of course we know the situation because I don't want to go through that, but what does he say? He's already met all the Pharisees and the people of Nazareth and even his own apostles. And has he told them that he's the Messiah, point blank? No, he did not. Even sitting with Nicodemus, he doesn't acknowledge what he acknowledges to this poor woman in the middle of the day at noon. He says he is the Messiah. He tells her who he is. But he doesn't say, I can't talk to you, you don't know my name. Or he doesn't say, I'm so-and-so and this is my name, you need to keep that name in mind. No, he just said, I'm the Messiah. And she drops her pail, drops her bucket, runs down, and is converted, right? Or comes and tells everybody, come and see the man that knew everything, right? It was about the heart. It was about the heart, which is why he loved her, because of her heart. And she wasn't even of Judah. Some people think she was partly of the lost tribes, possibly. Who knows? I believe she was Gentile, possibly mixed with some Israelite blood. Doesn't matter. But she certainly was not of Judah. She was not of the ones that had the name, the right name, as the Pharisees got also angry. Every time Jesus mentioned, the essence of the Father, they got furious, right? So like I said, we don't even know Jesus' name in Aramaic, what his mother called him, what his friends called him, and what the 12 called him. We don't know. We only have the Greek. And that's fine. It's enough. And as I said, if you feel like some other name is better for you, I only encourage you, don't use the ones that come from the movement of today. Can if you want, but really look into the occult side of things if you can stomach it. And you'll see where those names are coming from, many of them. And it's not pretty. So if you want to go there, that's fine. But I think it's best to know what you're using when you're calling out to God, that you're not calling out to somebody else. So here's the last video I did, as I said, on this same subject. I think it's worth going back if you have the time. And here's another video I think you might really like to enjoy up here. Anyway, take care, and thanks so much for all your wonderful comments and all those who I've used and those I didn't get a chance to. I sure appreciate everything you can share. Take care and have a good day. Bye-bye.